Hello, TRCSU, and welcome to another episode of. Oh, wait, nope, it's not Coffee with Coaches. What do we have today?
Oh, today is Tea
Tea
with
with
Queen.
Queenie.
Yeah, super excited.
Welcome. We are so excited to have you. This is great.
I'm definitely excited to be here today. Um,
Well, what do you
you know,
have for us today?
so today I have been asked to talk about the importance of revisiting expectations and routines coming back from a break. And this is obviously everything I, you know, have come on as a passion, but routines and expectations, I think, is definitely at my forefront. Especially thinking about our students and, you know, the, our we're in a world where a lot of our students are, some have some difficulties and challenges, and that's not the minority anymore. So, you know, this is a great way to kind of level that playing field for students coming back from a break, and especially coming back from a break, not only a 2-week Christmas break, but on top of that, we were a week of remote, which is definitely so kids have been out of practice of being in school for almost 3 full weeks. And at our school, I think it was a month. So, because we closed down a little bit early. But it's just super important. I've done a lot of research on this topic, and I'm still continually doing research. I have been focusing a lot on executive functioning skills and our metacognition, and how so many of our students have very low executive functioning skills, because we tend to not to teach it anymore. We think all these things are learned, and they're not. Kids don't know how to navigate the world and navigate school. And I think as teachers, we sometimes think, oh, everybody should know the routines already. Kindergartners go to first grade. Oh, they should know. They've been here a year. Our sixth graders, they've been here 6 years. They should know. But we have to really treat every student that they don't know what the expectation is. So I think that's a little bit about today, is just talking about, how to teach it. What does it look like? Does it have to be crazy like the whole first 6 weeks of school? I'm hoping everybody does do a whole first 6 weeks of school, and, teaching those behaviors in isolation every day. It doesn't have to be. We're going to talk a little bit about what pre-correction strategies are, and how that can be utilized in the classroom on a daily basis that will help our students who struggle with behavior challenges. So yeah, how's that sound to you guys?
That sounds awesome.
Good. So I think the first thing is that we really have to look at all of our students as individuals. And almost taking teaching behavior expectations on a tiered approach. That everybody needs to, when we come back from break, everybody needs to go over those expectations. And when I'm talking about expectations, I'm not just talking about what do we do when we come into the building, what do we do. I'm talking about those little things, almost even to how math group looks differently from reading group, and how independent looks differently from whole group instruction. All of those little things we really take for granted, and we think that kids already know, and it's not. And going over all of that information is important. How to walk in the hallways. Some of our kids forget day to day, and it's not a defiance thing. It's they actually forget those steps of what those expectations are. And we should be reviewing expectations all the time, but especially after break. And we all know that some of our kids come from unstructured households, so coming back into a really structured routine is super different, and takes some time. But really, we talk about, our kindergarten teacher started almost like he was back at the first couple of days of school, going over, you know, all of the routines in the classroom. Hand washing, mask wearing is huge now that kids don't, they went 3 weeks without having to wear a mask consistently. So, those mask wearing things and, yeah, how to move around the classroom, because again, we have to be conscious of our positioning and our being 6 feet away from people and all of those little things that we again think kids should know. We just need to review them, and that's just not. And I know people say, well, that takes out of my academics. Academics are going to go much smoother when we do that, when we've practiced routines and expectations on a consistent basis. I think the other big thing is when we do teach our expectations. Here we talk about teaching it through pre-correction strategies. So if we are moving into the hallway, a lot of our teachers, we've talked to them about, okay, so we're moving into the hallway. What does it look like to walk in the hallway? So really going over those expectations before they leave. So then they have 4 or 5 kids raise their hand, say, this is what we do. This is, we keep our hands to our side. We're watching our spacing between each other, we're quiet in the hallway. So going over those little things throughout the day. I observed our one of our 3-4 teachers moving from read aloud to writing. Okay, what does writing look like in our classroom? What is using your Chromebook look like in the classroom? So before moving and switching and going to those different parts of the day, really setting those expectations and doing it daily, and it can be seamlessly put into your daily routine. And what it does is it cuts down on the amount of interruptions, because we don't know what we have to do, and those interruptions of disruptive behavior, because you are setting kids up for success and not leaving them to fail, which is what we all want in the end. In having good classroom management and good behavior expectations and good routines really allows for more classroom academic time. And I can't stress that enough. Here at Proctor, so when I talk about the tier to support, that's pretty much tier 1 right there, is teaching it to everybody. A tier 2 might look at, you might ask a kid, you might go in you might go to them individually and go over expectations. You might do a little bit role playing sometimes with students who have difficult times. You might have I might have a conversation with students about, if they're having a difficult time in one area. It's more based on, certain skills that they're lacking. So you're not reteaching the same thing. So if you have one kid who's having a hard time in the hallway, but everybody else in your class it's just like math. If you had everybody in your class is, proficient in a math, in math, we're not going to reteach that to the whole class if one kid struggles with it. And we need to look at that as behavior too. We need to reteach that. And our tier 3 support here at our school, we have Bennett Boot Camp. With me, I have kids that seriously come in. They're small groups now, but last year I had 2 groups of 6 to 8 kids from first and second and kindergarten, second and third in kindergarten and first. And we did expectation boot camp. They came to me first thing in the morning, and having somebody to do that, or having, these little small groups that you can, I really, again, when we have behavior expectations and high expectations for kids, the academic time is super, you get so much more academic time. And I think people are starting to see that. But I do have resources on reteaching and how to model behavior expectations. PBIS does a really good job. They usually put in, usually teach it, and you teach it what it looks like, sounds like, feels like, for whatever we do respect self, others, and environment here. So what does it look like to respect self, and then others and environment? And then and then how do you role play with it? We have lesson plans that we give to teachers too. So it gives them ideas on how to teach those expectations. Um, we really try at Proctor to teach behaviors just like we teach an academic concept. Um, let's see. Does anybody have any questions in case I go on? Yes, Corey.
All right. So, thinking about so many of our classrooms kind of have a hybrid model going on right now where probably the majority of their class is in person and maybe they have 1, 2, 3, a handful of kids who are remote. As you are teaching expectations to your in-person kids, is it important to include those kids who are remote? And how would you include them? And would you include them for everything?
Not necessarily would I include them in everything, because obviously the way we run things and we move about the classroom, they don't need to know that. One thing I struggled with in the beginning of the year because I noticed that teachers weren't including them during those conversations was I always thought to myself, well, what if that kid decides or parents decide that kid comes in and they're going to be blindsided of all the new routines and expectations. So I do think there's a happy medium. I think that they should be involved at some point, but I don't think it needs to be to the extent because there are times in the day where small group instruction is not running right. You need to stop, reteach those expectations in the moment, and then you can go back. Do I think you need to, if your remote kids are not on during that time, do I think you need to call them in or whatever, or send them a message to come on? Absolutely not. But I do think the introduction to those expectations and routines are important in case they do tend to come back or whatnot. I also think it's important to talk about the routines and expectations of what it looks like as online learners. I know when we went unexpectedly remote before Christmas break, one of our biggest things was that Thursday and Friday was to really go over routines of how to mute yourself, how to ask questions, and how to navigate online learning if the classroom teacher didn't do that before, so that when we came back after break and we did a full week, that was out of the way and we could just pre-correct those things and give reminders, but we weren't starting pretty much over. I think it's important that we do teach those to in-class learners because, again, if a kid has to quarantine, they need to know those expectations. So I know our kindergarten teacher talks about online learning expectations often, and throughout the whole school year, he has been just in case. We never know with our numbers what the just in case day is going to ever be, if there ever is going to be one. But it's just you always want to be prepared for both sides. So we have set up a matrix of what online learning expectations are with our self, others, and environment. And every teacher's used it. Every teacher posted it up to their class menus for the week. And reviewed those often. So it's super important because you don't have a lot of time on remote. So you don't want to be spending your academic time teaching it. So setting that up so that you have the most amount of academic time is important. Did I answer your question, Corey? All right. Oh,
Lisa has a comment.
I got it. Yes, Bennett Boot Camp is really fun, Lisa. I have I think he's a third grader right now that doesn't necessarily need it, but has been asking for it. So he has a one-on-one boot camp with me. But we really just focus on what the expected and unexpected behaviors in the classroom, really just diving in deeper into how our choices and behaviors affect those around us, and when we're not following the classroom expectations or how does that make others feel? And I think sometimes bringing that in, we need to teach it. It's almost like teaching empathy. It's not almost like teaching empathy. It is teaching empathy because we want kids to know that their actions affect other kids. And when we're not following and we're derailing almost the classroom community and in our outbursts and stuff, how does that affect our other classmates? And so that's the kind of stuff that when you get into that tier 3 or tier 2 that you really want to dive into, because those kiddos need it as a deeper understanding too of why, why are we learning this? Gives you the why of it, of why do we need to follow what the classroom teacher is saying. Some of those kids will just follow it because that's what you tell them to do, but we know we have those handful of kids that always need the why. And so it's important to give the why about classroom routines too. Anybody else? And just like I did last time, I think Corey, I gave you my Bitmoji classroom that had a bunch of the other resources from the last talk I had. I will make up a list of resources for teaching expectations and sending our model.
Perfect. And we'll link them down below in the comments of the video, and then also put them in the next newsletter.
Oh, perfect. And Lisa just, talked about the expected and unexpected behaviors. I think that's it. I use that because it's an easy common language that can be used between areas. The kids, we have some of those kids that are really black and white that I work with. And so having those lists of these are what you can do and this is what you cannot do. And just having a list is sometimes better for them. It's visual, but it's also teacher can say, hey, listen, that's a completely unexpected behavior. What would be, how do we change that behavior to an expected behavior? And using that common language with some of our, tier 2, tier 3 kids is very important. It's that consistency. It's building that consistency that PBS does a great job building it tier 1. So we just need to beef it up in tier 2 and tier 3 for kids. So that's the language I use the most often with kids when teaching expectations. Was there anything else you wanted me to talk about?
I was just going to say that you said something at the beginning that really struck me, and it's, I think sometimes as educators we forget because we're tired, we're burnt out, we're exhausted, frustrated, and we forget that they're not always misbehaving, but it's more of a they did forget. They really truly did forget expectations, and it's sometimes I think quick and easy to react to the frustration you're feeling inside rather than having some empathy for them and understanding and doing that pre-teaching or reteaching of those skills.
Jenny, I'm glad you brought that up because if anybody's taken my CPI class, which is the crisis intervention prevention, it's the de-escalation. I always talk about the kiddos that, give us our hardest time, that they don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to make, Miss Smith really angry today. That's my goal. They don't. There's always usually a purpose around it. I mean, we get once or twice, we have those kids who want to push our buttons, but it's very rare. There's usually, and we gotta look at the students' behaviors almost as if it's telling us a story of what they're trying to communicate to us. And the first thing I always do is say to the kid when they get in trouble, did you not understand what you were supposed to be doing, or did you try to get them to tell me what the issue was instead of just accusing them that that they were trying to be defiant on purpose. I truly, and with my whole heart, don't think that we have kids that are just trying to be defiant or trying to be disruptive on purpose, that they're communicating something to us. And the easiest fix is to go back and explain what the expectations are. And that's why the unexpected and expected behavior, sometimes they don't realize what they just did was an unexpected behavior. We as teachers, sometimes we not like to, but we often jump to the punitive instead of the teaching. We wouldn't punish a kid for not knowing their multiplication facts. We would teach them their multiplication facts. So we shouldn't be punishing kids for, those disruptions, because we need to teach them sometimes an alternative behavior. Sometimes it's to the point of, you have a kid who's interrupting it in class. One thing I found out is kids sometimes don't know how you want them to respond to a question, because sometimes we say, okay, everybody respond, just shout out your answers, and sometimes we want raised hands, and sometimes we want you to turn and talk. So you get a kid who has some processing disabilities, or has even just executive functioning deficits. They don't know how you want them to respond so that blurting out is their way to contribute to class discussion, but it's not the way you wanted them to contribute. So we have to be explicit in teaching those kind of things. And I know that people, and I get it a lot, well, your Bennett boot camp takes out of their academics. And I always say to people in these tier 2, your groups take out of academics. And I always say that social emotional teaching and behavior expectation teaching will allow the kid to be more available for learning. And you're going to get more out of them in the long run. So yes, I take 15, 20 minutes out of your math lesson today, or your, morning meeting today, but I guarantee you in a couple months, they're going to be all day with no disruptions. So we really have to start to make this a priority. And especially, the amount of new routines we had to put in place for COVID. I mean, on top of the daily routines that we had every other year, that's a lot for a little kid to, keep in their little brains. So we can't just, punish kids for not following the expectations. We need to teach them, and sometimes teach them day after day after day. I mean, you have those kids that regress, daily forget, like, okay, you just taught them how to add two numbers together, but they come in tomorrow and they forgot what you're supposed to do. You got to just take those same kids and expect that that's going to happen with behaviors too, with expectations and routines. The question is, are there any specific expectations I think kids struggle with the most when returning from school? This year's a little different. I think one of our biggest ones in the past was playground and lunch routines and expectations. And for us, playground still sometimes, but there's that difference between being at home and roughhousing with your brothers and sisters and coming to school and roughhousing here. That's a big difference, and we have to teach those kind of things, that school and home are different. The throwing of the snowballs and all that kind of stuff. Those are important little things that we overlook, but they're allowed to get away with that kind of stuff at home. But because of safety concerns and stuff here, we can't let them do it. So those have always been those routines and expectations. But I think the biggest ones are that I notice are just the differences in what it looks like to independently work and what it looks like to be part of a whole group discussion. What is okay in, number talk for math, because we might be shouting things out and having those, open conversations, might not be the same when we're having a book discussion, or the expectations of if I'm running a small group, what are you supposed to do if you need help? Those little ones that are not in our face all day long, I think are super important to review. They usually tend to know those bigger ones of, how to come in, how to, those entry and exit procedures. Those are usually maintained. It's just the little nuances throughout the classroom that I think we really need to focus on. Anybody else?
That's awesome, Abby. You're so wise.
Why? Hold on one second. My
It just went dark.
it did.
You need to move more often.
Yeah. I don't know why they put it way over by the door, but no, it makes me laugh because to be honest with you, a lot of mine came from trial and error. You know, and I do a lot of reading and research. You know, and just knowing our kids. I mean, that's the biggest thing is building those relationships are super important with kids. You know, knowing that our kids are not trying to make us angry or trying to be naughty. They don't want to be, you know. All of our kids, you know, are inherently good kids. I truly believe that, and I think that's sometimes where we miss the boat a little bit, is that when we have a kid who's disruptive or something, it's because they're doing it on purpose, and I truly do not believe that, and I think anybody who knows me knows that. I say it in every de-escalation class that I have, that it's not about us sometimes. And sometimes our kids behave that way because it's a safe place for them. They know that no matter what, when they walk into that door, we're going to be the people that love them and care for them and make them feel safe. So sometimes that's the reason why, is because they feel comfortable enough to let out their frustrations with us. So we just have to continue that kind of work with students, so that they know that we are their safe spot, and it's okay to make mistakes, but we're going to teach them what to do, alternatively, or what not to do. So that's about it.
Beautiful. Perfect. Lisa says, thank you so much. And we thank you so much. We love having you on.
Oh, I do too. I love being here.
We're going to keep brainstorming ideas of how to keep bringing you back.
Oh, anytime. When Corey messaged me the other day, I was like, oh my God, I hope it's for this. I just like to share it. I mean, the people here at my work know all the, you know, they hear it from me all the time. So, and I, you know, think it's super important that everybody, you know, not that what I say is super important coming from me, just the actual content of it, I think is super important for educators to hear. I mean, if you guys want to talk about it, go, you know, I will give you the material. It doesn't have to be for me. It's just that content that I love to talk about and I feel very passionate about. So,
well, personally, I think we should clone you, but you know, that's probably not possible.
Don't say that too loud.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Absolutely. And Corey, I will make a list of resources and stuff. I know there's some things on that I have from PBIS that talks a lot about those expectations and routines, and you know, but I will get that to you later this afternoon. All right.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.